Today I'm doing sausage casserole, and there are different ways of making this. This recipe cooks the meat first, but puts it into a casserole dish and then simmers it really gently. If you're in a rush or you don't have any pans, you could just do it straight in a large pan and it'd be absolutely fine. All I'm doing first is I've just browned a lot of sausages in a little tiny bit of oil. I don't want to add much oil to this. If you prick the sausages, which I should have done, you won't have them bursting like this. So the browns are more or less, probably doing a little bit more, just for speed. I'm putting those in the casserole a bit, and then just make sure your pan's not too high and starting to stick. You can put the bacon in, and the bacon's got enough fat of its own really. I've put a lot of fat on, but you still get some white fat on it, so it should be fine in that with a small amount of oil. So as I said before, this recipe cooks things separately, but it wouldn't go wrong if you just put it all in together and fried it off and then put liquid in it. Similar kind of thing to how we make bolognese, etc. But it just kind of tends to make sure everything's browned quite nicely when you do it in stages. So when your bacon is crispy or brown, however you like it, it doesn't take long to cook. You can then put that into the pan with the sausages, and I'm just speeding that up a little bit. If you want to, if it's very fatty, you will need a little bit of fat for the onions and the garlic, but don't, if there's lots of fat left in your pan, use that. Try not to add any extra fat to the pan. I'm putting in, I think the recipe says 2 sliced onions. It's quite nice, the onions with this, because they go really soft and almost disappear into the sauce. Again, if you children or you're not keen on the texture or you don't like onions when you see them, grate them in and hide them. And you can add other vegetables as well. I'm putting garlic, and I'm using a sliced leek instead of an extra onion. Quite like leek in casseroles. And that tends to soften and disappear quite nicely. It's only onion family, so you've got that taste of the onion, but it's a bit gentler and milder. And that's just basically going to saute or fry gently in the remaining oil. You shouldn't really need any more. If it starts to stick, turn the stove down a little bit, or you could put a splash of oil in there if you want to. Just take it easy, trying to keep it relatively healthy and low fat. If you like vegetables like carrots, dice them like we did in the other recipes really finely, put those in, you put courgette in, any other things that you particularly like, you can put in there, peppers, mushrooms, that sort of thing as well. And they're just frying off, and then I'll add it to the sausage and the bacon. If I'm looking a bit distracted, it's because we have a new puppy, and he's chewing the chair of the camera lady at the moment. It disappears. So and I might trip up over him, so that would be a you'd brave moment. So I'm going to come back to you in a moment when these are softened, and I'll show you the next stage. Okay, I've sautéed the onions, and I'm using leek and garlic off, and they're just starting to turn like a brown colour on a low heat. Now that term for that is called caramelisation. And basically the natural sugars in the leek and the onions, and there's quite a lot of them in there, they, I can hear a banging noise, sorry. Oh, it's the stove. I thought it was in my head. The onions start to caramelise and they go really nice and sweet. So if you carried on doing that, you'd get really nice sweet onions, but just make sure it's on a lowish heat and just sizzling all the time, because if it starts to get too hot, it will burn. So once I'm happy with those, I'm going to add my seasonings. Now in this particular recipe, it's got paprika or chili powder, and paprika's a nice spice. This is a smoked paprika. It just adds a little bit of background heat without being really hot. I've got some dried herbs, and I've also got some fresh herbs that I've just snipped with some scissors just to make them smaller. So it's just parsley and anything that as I say, I've been trying to grow some herbs in my garden, so I've just put some thyme and some sage in there, but you can just use dried herbs, not a problem. I'm also going to add a splash of Worcester sauce, about a tablespoon if you're measuring, and I use this in quite a lot of things to just add that bit of extra background flavour. And now you be careful at this stage because you're adding things to the pan and it could start burning, so just keep an eye on it. A couple of spoonfuls of tomato paste, use that up, and if you're careful, just give it a good stir around. It doesn't look too great at the moment, but you're just giving all those nice flavoured, nice tomato flavour, and then a tin of tomatoes go in. Okay, and if you think it's sticking, take it off the stove or add your liquid very quickly. Okay, add that in, it's starting to look a bit better. I'm stirring it around, getting it all mixed in, and then I'm going to stick in not some leaves off a plant in the garden randomly, but these are bay leaves, and I'm not sure whether you'll have any in your hamper, but bay leaves are a really nice flavour. I've used them before in the lasagna and the ragu sauce, and you don't actually eat them, you just take them out, but they just impart, so you don't want to put more oxo in either. They impart a background flavour to the sauce. So you take them out when you finish cooking. And then I'm going to put an oxo or a chicken stock cube in. You could use beef if you wanted, or a vegetable one if you were doing a vegetarian version, and if you vegetarian sausages obviously. If you haven't got a measuring jug, you can use your tin, because you know on here it's 400 grams, and say you want 300 mils, you just fill it 3/4 of the way up. Okay, so you can also wash the tin out while you're doing it, and that just goes in like that. Okay, and now you've got a really nice rich sauce, which the last thing I need to do is, or one of the last things, is a little bit of salt and pepper. Remember what I say in school, put it in your hand first, because then you're not, if your hand slips, you don't get a load of salt. And once I did it and the lid fell off, so I've always learned my lesson. A bit of black pepper, you know I like my black pepper. Okay, and then we're ready really. The only thing I'm going to do now is add some beans. You don't have to add beans if you don't want to. Baked beans in tomato sauce are nice. Okay, add a good source of fibre. Just draining those. These are haricot beans. Very similar to baked beans, but without tomato sauce. You could add butter beans, red kidney beans, and beans are brilliant type of kind of fibre, and they also are very filling, and they, it makes it more of a meal. Sausage and beans is a good old meal, isn't it? So you can taste that. I'll just nice. I'm just going to put a little bit more salt in. You could put some soy sauce in. You could put some Marmite in, my favourite ingredient. And I'm just going to move that over, and I'm going to pour that carefully over. Now, you can perhaps see now how you can do it all in one pan if you wanted to, especially if young children are involved and you don't want them with large pans and turning it over. So you could just make it all in one pan, and if you're worried about the sausage and bacon burning, you just take those out and put them on a plate. Okay, so I'm not sure about a summer dish particularly in this very hot weather we're having at the moment, but it's an all-in-one dish, perfect for the autumn, definitely for the winter, and it's just a nice change. Okay, so it looks nice and hearty. Give it a stir. I'm going to pop the lid on, and I'm going to cook that, or simmer that on quite a low heat. So, on mine it's about number 3, so just really low. Keep an eye on it. If you're happier, you could stick it in your oven on about 160, and then you can don't have to leave the stove on. And it's great to freeze as well. And it's an all-in-one. I love these kind of meals when I'm working. I can come in and it takes minutes to prepare really. It probably took me from beginning to end about 10-15 minutes to prepare, and especially if you're not cooking everything separate, and then you can go and do something else, like play with a puppy for example, and then you can come back and your tea's ready. So, and again, you can freeze it. You can serve it with mashed potato or chips, or on its own, or with crusty bread, and mop up all those lovely juices. So I hope you enjoy this dish, and I'll see you soon.